In the muted grey light before dawn, the battlefield near Avdiivka remained deceptively quiet. This stillness, however, was a carefully constructed illusion. The primary objective for Ukrainian forces on this day was not to seize and hold territory. It was a far more subtle and sophisticated goal. The operation was designed to test Russian reaction times, to measure the speed and coordination of their command structure, and to force them into predictable patterns of response. It was a battle of timing, a tactical dance where the rhythm of the engagement mattered more than the ground gained or lost. Every move was calculated to trigger a specific reaction from the opposing side. At approximately 4:55 a.m., this calculated dance began. Small, agile Ukrainian units, numbering between 10 and 20 soldiers each, moved forward. They were supported by the formidable presence of American-made Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, whose armor and firepower provided a crucial mobile backbone for the operation. Overhead, unseen eyes watched the entire theater of operations. Unmanned aerial vehicles, or drones, provided a constant stream of real-time intelligence, guiding the ground units and monitoring every Russian movement. This combination of infantry, armor, and aerial surveillance created a potent and flexible force perfectly suited for the task at hand. The movements were intentionally brief and aggressive. The Ukrainian units would advance, make sharp, deliberate contact with Russian forward positions, and then immediately begin to withdraw. These engagements lasted no more than 5 to 9 minutes, a time frame meticulously chosen to be shorter than the average Russian artillery response time. Before the opposing artillery crews could even calculate the firing solutions and send shells arcing through the sky, the Ukrainian forces had already pulled back to their defensive lines. The shells that inevitably arrived, usually 3 to 6 minutes after the initial contact, landed on empty, churned-up earth, impacting nothing of value. This sequence was repeated several times, a methodical and patient process of provocation. Each probe was a small drain on Russian resources. It forced them to expend valuable artillery ammunition on phantom targets. More importantly, it drew the attention of their commanders and surveillance assets, pulling their focus toward these fleeting incursions. With each feint, the Russian forces were being conditioned to react, their readiness slowly being eroded by a series of jabs that offered no clear target for a decisive counterblow. The stage was being set for the main engagement, with the enemy's resources and attention deliberately misdirected and depleted. As the early morning light strengthened, the preparatory phase of the operation concluded, and the main event began with precise timing. At exactly 6:21 a.m., the character of the engagement shifted dramatically. 2 Ukrainian Bradley IFVs, which had been providing support from a distance, now surged forward. They were not advancing blindly. Their path was guided by a dedicated UAV that fed them a clear picture of the battlefield ahead. The drone's operator identified a Russian armored carrier attempting to reposition itself. The target was approximately 650 meters away, a comfortable range for the Bradley's powerful 25mm autocannon. The Ukrainian response was a model of efficiency and lethal accuracy. Within a breathtaking 30 seconds of the target being identified, the lead Bradley opened fire. A rapid burst of high-explosive rounds tore across the open ground, striking the Russian vehicle with devastating force. The armored carrier was disabled almost instantly, its mobility and combat effectiveness neutralized before it could pose a threat. The speed of the attack was critical. It denied the Russian crew any opportunity to react, dismount their own infantry, or return effective fire. The entire sequence, from detection to destruction, was a testament to the seamless integration of drone intelligence and ground-based firepower. Just 2 minutes later, at 6:23 a.m., Russian forces attempted to reinforce their faltering position. A second armored vehicle was observed moving forward, likely intending to support the first disabled unit or to counter the Ukrainian advance. However, the Ukrainian drone was already tracking its movement. The second Bradley, positioned perfectly for the engagement, acquired the new target at a range of about 700 meters. Once again, before the Russian infantry squad inside the vehicle could even prepare to dismount and join the fight, a volley of cannon fire erupted. The vehicle was struck and disabled, halting the reinforcement effort in its tracks. The climax of this brief but intense clash came at 6:26 a.m. A third Russian armored target presented itself at close range. This time, instead of relying on its autocannon, one of the Bradleys employed a different tool from its arsenal. It launched a Tau anti-tank guided missile, a weapon designed for precisely this purpose. The missile streaked toward its target, striking with overwhelming force and completely destroying the vehicle. In less than 6 minutes of direct, high-intensity combat, Ukrainian forces had systematically identified, engaged, and neutralized 3 separate Russian armored assets, all while avoiding any significant return fire. The destruction of 3 armored vehicles in such a short span of time had an immediate and profound impact on the battlefield. The momentum, which had been a carefully managed back and forth, now swung decisively in Ukraine's favor. For the Russian infantry in the area, the loss of their armored support was catastrophic. These vehicles were not just a means of transport. They provided essential covering fire, protection from shrapnel and small arms, and a psychological bastion of safety on a dangerous and open landscape. Without them, the soldiers were suddenly vulnerable and exposed. Their tactical cohesion began to unravel almost immediately. What was once a coordinated group of soldiers with a clear objective now fragmented into smaller, disorganized elements. Lacking the mobile protective cover of their armored carriers, the infantry were forced to move in the open, dashing between whatever sparse cover they could find. Their movements became reactive and uncoordinated, driven by self-preservation rather than a unified tactical plan. The Ukrainian drones circling overhead observed this disintegration, relaying the growing chaos back to their commanders. The Russian force was no longer a cohesive fighting unit, but a collection of exposed targets. At this point, the Ukrainian objective shifted once more. The goal was not to advance and annihilate the now vulnerable infantry. Instead, the forces transitioned to a strategy of controlled denial. They used the superior observation from their drones to identify the routes the Russian soldiers were attempting to use for withdrawal or regrouping. The Bradleys, along with other supporting units, then laid down suppressive fire on these key corridors of movement. The aim was not necessarily to inflict maximum casualties, but to disrupt, harass, and prevent the enemy from reorganizing into an effective fighting force. This phase demonstrated the true nature of the operation. By denying the Russian forces the ability to move freely, the Ukrainians controlled the space without having to physically occupy it. Every attempt by the Russian infantry to consolidate their position was met with accurate, suppressive fire, forcing them to remain scattered and ineffective. The psychological pressure mounted with each passing minute. The loss of their armored support had been the decisive blow, and now, pinned down and unable to coordinate, the Russian soldiers were caught in a tactical trap, engineered not by overwhelming force, but by superior timing and intelligence. Having achieved all of their primary objectives, the final phase of the operation was initiated. The Ukrainian command gave the order to withdraw. This was not a hasty retreat under pressure, but a controlled and orderly disengagement, executed with the same precision as the initial attack. The entire process began within 2 minutes of the final Russian armored vehicle being destroyed. The timing was once again critical. The withdrawal was designed to be completed before the inevitable and likely heavy Russian artillery response could be brought to bear on their last known positions. The goal was to leave the battlefield on their own terms. The 2 Bradley IFVs played a central role in this final act. While the small infantry units began their stage pullback, the Bradleys provided covering fire, a steel rearguard that ensured the disengagement was secure. Their cannons suppressed any potential counterattacks, keeping the exposed Russian infantry pinned down and unable to interfere with the withdrawal. This disciplined execution demonstrated a high level of training and command and control. Each element of the Ukrainian force knew its role, executing it flawlessly to ensure that everyone could pull back to safety without suffering casualties. It was the mirror image of the chaotic Russian retreat. The operation concluded as it had begun, with Ukrainian forces back in their starting positions, having suffered no significant losses. They had not gained a single meter of new territory, but that was never the point. The mission's success was measured by a different set of metrics. They had successfully tested and baited Russian reactions, forcing them to waste ammunition and reveal their response times. They had disrupted the enemy's command focus, pulling their attention to a carefully orchestrated series of events. Most importantly, they had inflicted disproportionate losses on Russian armored assets in a swift and decisive engagement. Ultimately, the engagement near Avdiivka was a powerful illustration of modern tactical thinking. It showed that victory is not always defined by lines on a map. By controlling the tempo of the battle, deciding when and where to fight, for how long and on what terms, the Ukrainian forces achieved a significant tactical victory. They disrupted the enemy, degraded their capabilities, and seized the initiative, all without getting bogged down in a costly fight for ground. It was a clear demonstration that in the complex dance of modern warfare, timing can be a more potent weapon than territory.